This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne. We're on episode 123, and this week we're featuring our conversation with Dave Hause. He is a singer-songwriter originally from Philadelphia, coming up in the punk rock world. He had a band called The Loved Ones. He's recorded and released several solo records now, 2 or 3 of which have been produced by Hause. He releases his music independently with his brother on their record label called Blood Harmony. And he's toured with people like Gaslight Anthem, Lucero, Brian Fallon, and Chuck Reagan.
Yeah, and this is a really great conversation. If you have been a longtime listener and enjoyed one of our early episodes with BJ Barham from American Aquarium, this kind of has a lot about pulling up your blue collar and being a working class hero, just showing up and doing the work. And if you've listened to any of these episodes, you know that I am here for that. We talk about knowing what is right for you and accepting that path, even if it might not be right for somebody else or it might not be what the stereotype is. Find what works for you and lean into that. My favorite metaphor in the whole thing was a metaphor about the river of creativity and then the ocean and being out at sea as part of the industry. And then there's the middle ground of brackish water where the river kind of meets the sea, and just trying to stay upstream as much as possible and accepting the ups and downs of this life to be able to remain up there upstream. As always, there are some topics that we touch on in this conversation that come as direct suggestions from our Patreon. Not only do they get advanced notice of who our guests are, they also get the intense moral satisfaction of supporting this show financially in the only way possible currently. So if you would like to dive deeper into what we talk about, if you would like to have your burning questions answered by some of our upcoming guests, or if you would like to support the production of our show so we can continue making these episodes, please check the link below in our show notes.
Yeah, we really, really appreciate that. And if you're a visual person, this episode and all of our episodes are available to watch on YouTube.
But without further ado, here is our conversation with Dave Hause.
We have a 4-year-old who decided to be awake like all night.
Oh my God.
We have a 7-month-old who sleeps really well, but she woke him up. So if our vocabulary and our conversational skills are not up to par, just blame our children.
I have twins, so my brain has been beaten into mush.
Yeah.
So we can just sort of caveman our way through this.
Especially once you get up into having 2 kids, there's 2 modes. You either you do it or you do it tired. You can't just stop. I wouldn't do anything.
There's no stopping. Yeah.
There's no napping. There's no resting. We just have to find the words.
Yeah.
I will say this. I have 3 sisters. They all have kids, multiple kids. And 4, I was like struggling. I don't know what was going on. Maybe the festival, I forget. And my sister Sarah was like, "You're about to turn a corner." And I was like, "Oh, so sweet." And I told her 20 months later, I was like, "Where's this fucking corner?" Because he was like, "I might have been a little premature. I was just trying to give you hope." I was like, "No, I need facts. When do we turn and what's on the other side of the corner?" It didn't feel like till maybe 5.5 that the corner turned. So I was like, don't give me false hope at 4.5. This is brutal.
Yeah,
did you just see my hopeful face though of like, oh, 5.5?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm trying to mitigate expectations. I'm really trying to make sure that I don't give you false hope. You will turn a corner at some point with the 4-year-old, depending. Do you have a girl or a boy?
We have a girl.
Oh, well, this could be hopeful.
Yeah, so far our experience, you hear somebody say, "You're about to turn a corner," and it feels hopeful. And we've turned corners, but it's been worse.
I know. And I mean, my sister Sarah has a really thick Philly accent, and she's total ham. She's super funny, but she was like, "Yeah, that corner was a little further up the road than I let on." But, I was just trying to give you and Natasha some hope. I was like, what the fuck? Come on. You gotta do better. I need substantive, evidence-based, here's where their brain improves in cognitive.
Yeah.
But it's not
I do think, also people are like, 3 is way worse than 2. 4 is actually way worse than 3. And I don't know. I think some things are worse, some things are better. She can communicate so much more clearly, and that's incredible. Sometimes it's maddening at 3 a.m. when she's like, "I'm not scared. I just don't want to be in my room."
Yeah. The problem to me seems just to be like as joyful as so much of that is, it's the other pulls of life that make it like you're like, I got to work. It's that part of it that like you'll never remember. And then you'll go like, look at the pictures in the video and go like, why was I so fried? Why can't I remember any of this? It's, well, because you're trying to do a career thing as well, or you're trying to do whatever other thing you're trying to do. And that's the part that I think is like sad. And also you can let yourself off the hook. It's like, well, I had to work to feed your little ass. So I can't remember how cute you were. And that's why I lost my temper.
Yeah.
This is actually a good segue into talking about your creative work as well, and how a lot of this life is the commentary in your songwriting. But there's just another school shooting. There's the Texas floods. There's so many things that keep that fear of losing our children like so on the surface. It confuses me. I'm like, what in the long term will be good for my child's development and holding boundaries and keeping her safe? And what is coming from me acting out of fear that something bad could happen? So I will be glad that I cuddled her to sleep instead of saying, no, you have to sleep in your own bed. We sleep in your own bed. So it's so difficult. Like all of our actions are within this context of what's happening around us. And I think about that all the time of like parenting would feel so different if I wasn't being pulled by these other things I need to do and also want to do. And then also as a mother, the music industry is like a whole other role in the relationship to parenting and career.
It seems to be just like a problem of evolution. So technology has evolved in an explosive way and our human brains have not. You know, we're probably better served acting much closer to cave people, you know, when it comes to raising our kids than we are this, because there was much more tragedy, I'm sure, when humans were developing because the infant mortality rate was higher. You know, people didn't live as long, but they weren't being inundated with it from a Twitter feed. And so I think it's just general anxiety in the culture from we have too much information to process, you know? And so then you go, how can I synthesize all the stuff that's coming at me? How can I be a concerned citizen who votes locally appropriately and cares about my fellow man and does this stuff for the school board and all that other stuff while keeping the wolves at bay in terms of like all the other stuff that's coming at you? I just left for tour and I had 100 or so days where I was at home with my sons at 6, which there is a corner that I turned and it's so magical. It's so awesome. Like we spent most of the summer skateboarding and we took a big road trip. I mean, it was just so magical to have that time off. So then I'm leaving. They're going back to school. There's all this transition. It's very painful. Despite me liking my job, it's sad to say goodbye to the people that I love the most. And their 6-year-old brains can only handle a certain amount of information. And then you open up your news feed and a boy in Ventura died on the beach, like freakishly, you know, he fell off a rock or whatever. And I'm sure that's been happening for as long as there's been humans. I don't want to know about it because I'm like, I got to go home. I think that whole soup of information and just what our brains are now exposed to in modern world is too much, especially when you're trying to keep quiet. My therapist said, you know, when the boys were really little, like your job is to keep the home calm. You can't be working out every issue maritally or socially or whatever in the home. Your job is to keep that home safe and secure for the small children to kind of like attune and adapt. And I'm like, oh, right. So it's definitely hard in modern age to do it. But the fact that you care, I think, means you're probably doing it well because you care enough to think it through.
Yeah, that's the paradox of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard because you care. But yeah, you know, especially like you said, like our access to information overload is insane.
Right.
Like you were saying with the calmness, like I think about that a lot of like basically like being the shock absorber for the world. So the world comes at us.
Yeah.
We are the shock absorber, and what needs to come out the other side is like a nice, smooth road.
Or at least a person who, when they're your age, can absorb further shock without melting down. That's such a challenge because that really would mean that I'm moving the ball forward because I didn't absorb shock well for 25 years or something, you know, like mental health, addiction, divorce, all kinds of just crazy madness. And that was before we had social media. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's like no one's going to get a smooth road, but if you give your children the ability to manage the road that's coming at them, like then you've done the job. But it's wild. I mean, I definitely can only take so much political news, especially in the second Trump term. The whole approach is to get clickbait, have you keep coming back in a loop. And I can't stay in that loop. I have like other things to do. I have to get to work. I have to get my kids to school. I can't be in that loop. And so at that point, you do sort of actively make a decision to not be as engaged in your goings on because like you have a larger calling.
Part of that larger calling as an artist, I'm curious if you can speak to how you've seen that change in your life. If I'm correct, you've been making records and writing songs for over 30 years.
Sounds too long. That sounds way too long.
That's what the internet said.
I mean, I'm 47, so that would be started at 17. Yeah.
Okay. So creating in a large period of time and trying to keep that just contained to like adulthood versus comparing to when we were children. But adulthood, our access to information, the technology, everything. How have you seen that change how you create or your relationship to your creativity?
They're all just tools to get the job done. Seems like there's a lot more paint colors to paint with. Whether that's the interfaces we were discussing earlier in like a home studio, there's just more access to inspiration too. You can hear every recorded thing. And then you do have that wealth of information we were just sort of lamenting, which can be a wellspring for creativity. You're responding to your surroundings. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's, again, another paradox. We've got tons to pull from and tons of ways to respond to it and create. And I think that hopefully you keep your North Star, the fact that you are trying to keep a childlike amount of wonder when it comes to creativity. Watching your kids, you're like, oh, wow, whatever comes to mind, they just draw that or they just sing that. And that's like pretty pure. And I think it's a tightrope act as an older person to kind of like lean into that and that joyfulness and that like abandon, and then also try to temper it with taste and like, okay, well, that's a bad lyric. You shouting about hitting your brother over the head with a stick in the kitchen, like, well, but that's a good melody, you know? So you're just trying to decipher like what's coming through you and then trying to hone it in a way that's the most compelling. I think that's generally what I think of as my job. And I've probably said this in many podcasts, so forgive me for being repetitive, but I just think of a river, and the river is creativity, right? And when you're by the river and your job is to like pull little fish out of creativity and like be in this pure, drinkable water. And as the water goes towards the ocean's filled with sharks and it's dark and scary, and that's the industry. That's where you have to swim and you either sink or swim. And then there's like brackish water, which is where the pure meets, it's not quite out to the ocean, but that's where you're like, all right, what order should the songs go in? And what's the single? What's the catchiest song? What's going to allow us the best path into the ocean? And so that more or less starts as soon as you get into the studio, because you have to make a ton of like little decisions. All right, I want to play that part twice, but let's face it, no one wants to hear that part twice. And so that's like a brackish water decision because you're making a commercial decision. Does that mess with the original intent? Not really. If the original intent is this creative germ that you're like fostering out into the ocean, it's kind of like raising a child. Like you want that idea to hopefully get out into the ocean and survive. So that's kind of my best working metaphor for it all. And I think it's helpful to think about it that way because I like to stay upstream for as long as possible. And like right now, I'm not at all there. You know, I'm playing shows, I'm doing interviews. This is the brackish water. If not, this is like out in the ocean. And because I'm promoting a record, I'm trying to feed my family and play shows. And then you have to turn all that off when you're about to perform, because when you're about to perform, that's a whole other endeavor. I always think of it as like I'm trying to combine David Lee Roth and Conor Oberst, or Patty Griffin and David Lee Roth. You know, like I want it to be emotionally vulnerable and compelling. And that's the way we're going to like transcend emotionally. But then also like, I want to have fun and everybody there wants to blow off steam. So that's a whole other thing about trying to get into the headspace of performing for me. That is another like weird hat you have to like jam on and then go out on the stage. It's a weird life.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you have tools or practices that you use to shift through all of these gears. Because I mean, we've been talking for 10 minutes and we've shifted through at least 5 to 7 different roles in life. And for me, like sometimes I've got clean transmission fluid, a new clutch, all of that. It's like, woo, this shift's great. And other times I'm like, this clutch is gone and I need to go from second gear to third gear and I just jam it in there. So I wonder if you found anything that works for you.
I would say the thing that works the best is breathing. Like I've done therapy. I drank for 20 years heavily. That seemed to work until it didn't.
Yep.
And I mostly joke, but that was a useful crutch at a time. I think breathing. I got bumped up to first class for a long flight, and I was sat next to a neuroscientist that lives in Santa Barbara. And this woman had done every conceivable job in life. She had been a flight attendant, a pilot. Like, she is brilliant. And I think now it's a little bit more available and being talked about. But this was a couple of years ago. And she just was like, look, here are breathing techniques for you to shift from, because I was like, I just did a European tour. It's where our audience is the biggest. And I'm going back into like seeing my tiny children. And she was like, oh, you need to breathe. You need to like breathe out the rock star guy and breathe in the dad guy. And I was like, okay, lady, what the fuck are you talking about? But she was like, no, I'm a neuroscientist. Like, this is what happens to your brain when you breathe, and how you breathe is part of it. Honestly, that's been the most helpful tool right before I go on, before I go back into the house after a tour, in the middle of a quarrel between my twin boys, breathing, helping them regulate, getting on their eye level. Like, there's all these like physical aspects to it too. But yeah, a lot of that pivoting, you have to breathe through, and then you're able to reset your brain a little and then move forward.
When I do remember to breathe, I'm not going to claim to say like, oh, I've been breathing, it's great. I'm like this monastic saint on top of a mountain, but it has felt like rejuvenating ice water when I do remember that. It's like, oh, okay. Being the calm in the middle of the storm.
There's all these other ancillary things. There's exercise, obviously, that's pivotal. What you eat, how much you sleep, which good luck with that. But then also there are those sauna and cold plunge and all that stuff is legit. You're changing your physical chemistry, I guess, or your big things about your environment quickly. And I find that stuff to all be helpful. I'm not sure how much of it is placebo, and I definitely don't care. I'm just like, I think this vitamin's working. And part of it is like you're actively trying to make little changes throughout the day to get on the right foot. And if that is placebo, fine. If the change occurs, I don't really care how we get there.
I am, and was kind of raised like kind of a little bit of a skeptic, a healthy dose of skepticism, healthy dose of cynicism. The way I've come to define it with myself is it's the intention that makes the change.
Yeah.
It could be whatever it is. If you're doing it with pure intention, I'm doing this so that I can achieve, that is what makes the change. Because like, I can take whatever or do whatever it is that's like proven, but if I'm not like mentally there in presence of doing it, it's not going to do anything. It doesn't matter like how proven it is.
Doing the work, and half of doing the work is like showing up for work.
Yeah, and we do know from research like what practices help human beings feel healthier and be healthier. We know that like drinking alcohol and eating shitty food and not sleeping and doing drugs is not going to sustain.
Are totally fun.
It's crazy. I mean, we're in our late 30s, and I'm like, the number of people that we've seen in our peer group who've like had liver failure in their 40s, it's just like, we know these things. And the challenge of having specifically touring musician life, I think, is finding your own balance of how do I do the things to be a healthy human being, whether that is exercising regularly, sleeping regularly, abstaining from drugs and alcohol, whatever it is that you need to be healthy, and maintaining that while doing the things that I think I need to do to have a successful career, and touring relentlessly, all this stuff. They don't create the environment to be consistent with those things that are required to be healthy. So it's really a big personal challenge. It's not a community that supports it. The just infrastructure of touring, playing in bars, all of that stuff. I mean, we see this, again, we've had over 100 conversations with people. We are musicians ourselves that have come up into this community. All of our friends are musicians, and we see the same cycles all the time, which is you start out and we all have this kind of idea and jump in. What's fun? It's a party. Also the lore, whether we're conscious of it or not, of what it is to be a musician, of having this kind of fun, reckless life, partying with each other. I have a quote from you that I found of, I don't want my life to become fodder for songs. I want my creativity to be fodder for songs. But I think a lot of us do think, oh, we got to live this crazy life and then we'll have inspiration for songs. And most people we see get to a point in their life where they can't sustain it anymore and have to make some positive changes to continue on this path. Can you speak a little bit about that, of what that was like for you to make those shifts and how to stay on that path while also continuing to have a touring career?
I mean, these were just tiny lessons you learn along the way. I looked at my partying from many different angles because I had done it for so long. And I just started to think, okay, well, I've been divorced once already. I've lost a successful international touring act that had a lot of promise. That's gone, and I have a solo career and a new potential wife. And I'm living in California where the stakes are higher. It's more expensive. And how many times do you get another shot? So I had a shot with the loved ones. Like, there were friends of mine who were like, hey, man, you've got a shot here as a solo artist. Like, people are coming out to see you, kind of thing. And I just thought, well, now I'm really gambling again with precious things, the ability to have it all. And I remember Chuck Reagan's wife, Jill, told me on a bus one time, we were up late. I don't even know if she was drinking, I was drinking. And she said to me, if you made minor tweaks, you could have it all. The rest of the tour, we would go for the Jameson bottle, and I'd go minor tweaks and I could have it all, right? And like, it really stuck with me. It still sticks with me. But I think just over time, I started to think, well, hey, I'm getting older. I'm pushing 40. I kind of know what this pattern is. Party, push it to the limit, and then feel shitty and repeat. And I know this doesn't end well. And knowing it doesn't end well is one part, but another part was just like, this is a known commodity and I'm a little bit intellectually bored by it. Mm-hmm. Like, what if I just was able to read more and write more songs and like did something else? Like, am I going to define myself if I get 75 years on the planet? Or let's hope now it's 95 because I have children, but I spend 20 or 30 or 40 of them drinking. It's like boring. Athletes at the top of their game get like 20 years of doing the sport. And that's exciting and compelling. And then they have to move on and do something else. Am I going to say, yeah, my life was characterized by alcohol? I don't know. That just seemed lame. Like I was squandering some little promise that my English teacher saw something in me and was like, you could do things. You could do things beyond the scope of what you think are currently possible. Mm-hmm. And it would be a bummer for that English teacher to be like, yeah, he could have, but all he did was drink and take drugs, Mm-hmm. So that was part of it. I mean, I just think there's little changes, but also like at the end of the day, if you look a little bit closer to the archetypes and the people who have gone ahead, Bruce Springsteen clearly works out all the time and writes songs all the time. He's not out snorting cocaine and stage diving into Christmas trees. He's working. And he has an enormous breadth of work to show for it. Billy Joel, for years, from what I can tell, chasing women, getting hammered and driving up the Long Island Expressway, having a great, exciting rock star life, didn't put out songs for decades. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure that there's a corollary there. I don't know. I can't speak to whatever. But I will say at a certain point, like Taylor Swift works all the time at writing songs and is really, really good at it. And I just noticed between when I was like, got sober and now I've put out, 65, 70 songs, 6 records, 5, like a lot of material. Mm-hmm. And in the years where I was heavily drinking as a solo artist, I had put out 2. And then you're like, oh, I got to go back on the road because I didn't write any songs or I only wrote 4 songs. And so I think like leaning into the creative part of who you are and not the like reckless abandon part of who you are yields a more interesting result and a more compelling result. And the lore is half of that is made up and half of it is irrelevant because they could afford better drugs. Yeah, they were doing drugs all the time, but they weren't getting them from some guy in a Nashville bar that had been stomped on. Keith Richards was getting really good drugs, and that doesn't do the same thing to your system that the drugs I was getting were.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that.
That's the thing. Like, I'm also not like a big booster for sobriety. I'm just trying to call it like I see it. For me, like, we don't speak clearly about some of this stuff. I tend to smell a rat. Like you said, you're a skeptic. And there is that contingent of sobriety where it's like, well, I just had to yield to my higher power. Like, yo, I would much rather be partying from a gut instinct level. Like my basest instinct is like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But at a certain point, like I'm also pushing 50 years old. And like I have people that I care about and that care about me. And, you know, this is ridiculous. This is a job. You can't just party if you're a tile setter. And so if this is my job and I get paid to do it, I have to work. And so it would be absurd to show up to work wasted. It's super lame. So I dug into my working class commitments or tenacity or something, or whatever that would be. Like I'm a working class person. I want to work. And I think all that swirl created like at least a path forward for not doing what I've been doing for all those years.
Yeah, I hear that. And for me, like most of the people I grew up with are working like laborer, hard work jobs. And they might party all night, but like they get up at 5 and they go to work and they work really hard for 10 hours straight and come home and take care of what they need to take, you know, call it functional alcoholism, if you will. But like through that is still like there's a respect for the work. And this is a broad generalization, but I see it like there's a trap in us as artists as a profession growing up. And like I had idols, I had people that I really looked up to, musicians and all of that. And it's like, wow. And it started there. You know, it's like this intrigue. It's like, I love this music. I love this person. I love this person. Oh, that's cool. And then you get this whole like stereotype characterization of like the troubled artist, the partying artist, I'm going to throw a TV out the hotel window into the pool, like all that.
You start reading the biographies.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. Then there's also like that myth gets debunked, I think, on the business side of being an artist quicker than it does on the fan side, if that makes sense. So I think us as artists see like, oh, there was a lot more going on here than that, where fans are like, no, artists, all they do is just like play music and they get to party and like the life is great. It's like having to do the business. We see there's so much more that has to happen besides being on stage.
I think that's changing though. I think that the fans, at least our fans, are savvy. I think that there's that punk rock thing. I think they pay extra attention. I think songwriting fans are really like, they feel like you cracked yourself open. And so they're more apt to sort of dig down and go like, what's really going on here? And you see the question on your social media, like, what's the best way to support you guys? Meaning they've read an article about Spotify. They read an article about Live Nation and all these corporations that have made our work even more difficult. And I think that they're trying to meet us where we're at. And so I think that's changing. And that, I mean, also like how much of a myth can be created about an artist you're going to see in a 300 cap room. Like if you're there and there's 150 people, you're like, well, I know this person is not a rock star. This person is a musician that has spoken to me and this is going to be cool, but I'm here for something else. And that's where you have to temper the David Lee Roth part with the Patty Griffin part, because you're there to connect in various ways, I think, for the performance. And you can get up on the stage and act like you're in Oasis, but everybody in the room, including you, knows you're not. You know, you're not playing a stadium. You're not playing an arena. You're playing in a small club. And there's a different kind of transcendence that you can get from that if you do it with some level of honesty and directness. I've tried to lean into that. There's times where I'll have the whole band, you know, you warm up and you get ready to go on stage. It feels like a boxing gym or whatever. And the intro's going or whatever, you know, the playlist, you've got a half hour or whatever. And sometimes I'll like put on Brandi Carlile. There's this song she wrote about a friend of hers who I think took their own life. It's called That Year. And it's like heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Like she gets into the vulnerability of being a teenager and how she was angry at this person. And I'll sometimes put that on and be like, there's someone in the front row who's going through something like that. And they don't necessarily want you to just be the Clash. They want some form of like legit vulnerability to hit them in a way on a Thursday night amidst the maelstrom of a rock and roll show. And so I try to sometimes do that if I'm feeling a little too masculine energy or something, a little too like, yeah, come on, let's do this. It's, you know, I got to remember like what the point is. What's the desired effect? It's a lot of switch tracking your mental, like, okay, what are we trying to do here? Let me write the set list appropriately and let me be willing and able to change if the room is not receiving the transmission properly.
I feel like that's something that I could talk about forever, of just like the mental fortitude that it actually requires to sustain a lifelong career as a public professional musician who like is not only creating for your whole life, creating new material, but also engaging with their audience and building a professional career on their art. And I think that's a really important aspect that, especially for younger artists, I don't know if I wholeheartedly understood that. Like, I remember my dad's a military guy. He's a 30-year career submarine captain, and he was a wrestler and personal trainer on the side in his spare time as a nuclear submarine captain.
I got to get him hooked up with this neuroscientist.
Yeah.
For real.
That I won't even go into the depths of why he should also be hooked up with a neuroscientist of our family, just like brain stuff. Anyways, I remember early on him saying to me, like, if you want to do this, if you want to be a musician, like, I think you need to approach this like an athlete. He was like, you need to train. And so my parents were always very supportive of, like, I had lessons, and they were like, if we're paying for lessons, you need to practice and you need to be, doing this stuff. And I went to a music school. That's where we met in college. But I think somewhere along the way, when I started playing in bars in my 20s and like got really infatuated with like old school country music, and I lost my way a little bit. And my community was, not to be disparaging of that community, but I don't feel like that kind of more principled, academic, disciplined approach was popular or celebrated.
They were busy celebrating something else.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like a tinge of maybe like embarrassment of how I feel like it's taken me a long time. But I don't even want to say I have embarrassment, because I think we learn the things we need to learn in the time we need to learn them. But it excites me because I do a lot of songwriting coaching. It's exciting to me what happens when we have consistency and discipline. And I mean, Aaron is way bigger on this. He's just naturally a more disciplined person than me. I feel like it takes a lot more emotional work on my end to stay consistent with something.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting to see what happens creatively, and then also just what can be produced opportunity-wise or not. I try not to even be attached to like the outcomes, but just energetically and creatively, what can happen when you keep your mind and body healthy and show up for the work on a regular basis, which can be really hard when you're pulled by all the other stuff, even mentally getting caught up in like, well, how come it's not going as well as I hoped it would be going by now? Or how come I'm not making as much money as I thought I would be making? Or how come I don't have as many followers as I thought I would have by now? And I succumb to that stuff often, and then have to be like, wait. How do I stay consistent in the work that I have control over? Which is one of the foundations of why we have this podcast.
Our keyboard player, Mark, is awesome. He's got great energy. He's really talented. He's like the musician in the band. He plays also with Will Hogue.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls Will Hogue his music band, and he calls us his fun band, which
Ew.
talk about a dagger to the heart. I know what he's doing. He's fucking with Will and me, because Will is going to be like, man, we're not the fun band. Come on. But I get what he's doing. But ultimately, like, we just did 3 shows in Philly the last 3 nights, which was like a huge party. The band's all there. We did a big free show in Philly. Then we did like a sold out record thing in the suburbs. And then we did this political fundraiser yesterday. Mark got into town. He's all amped up, and he's like, yo, 2 singles are out. How's it going? And I was like, what do you mean, how's it going? He's like, it seems like, that this is going to be, and he had like that energy. And I was like, oh, dude, I don't know. We have to like write the next record. I was like, don't get caught up in how it's going. How it's going is like, I hope well. The songs are starting to come out. They're going to go out into that ocean and live or die. We have shows to play. We have meaningful work ahead where we can hopefully connect with an audience that hopefully shows up. But I have to make the next thing. I have to start thinking about making the next thing. Because the minute we go, oh my God, it's going so well, there's 10,000 more streams on the new song than there was on the last song. You got caught swinging because that pitch has already come and gone. We did that work. Now it's time for that work to come out and for people to connect with it. And I want to give that work its fair shake. Right? By playing the songs live. But it's time to start thinking about what's next so that we can continually provide for not only ourselves, but for the band, for my kids. There's a lot to do. You could tell he was a little bit puzzled. Like, well, why wouldn't we celebrate how many streams Look Alive has got? Because if you do that, you're going to wish it was more. Well, how do we get it from 65,000 to 85? I don't know. We have a manager, and he'll tell us how we can best try to do that. But also, like, it's not the point. We'll do as much as we can to support that work and get it heard as we can, but we have to make more work. That's the job. And so I think that whole comparison thing, it goes back to the earlier part of our conversation where you go like, you're not supposed to color your picture as a child and then compare it to your friend. That's what we all do. And then your picture looks crappier. And now we have that times, we can put out a single and go like, oh, more people are listening than last time. And then you look at your buddy and your buddy has more streams, or you look at Adele and she's obviously got the most streams. And so like, what are you doing? It's got nothing to do with them. It's your own thing. And that's true at the bar if you're hanging out after, because you're like, oh, I might have to talk to this person who could help my career. They're all drunk. Just go home. They're not going to remember if you left. You're better off staying close to that upper part of the river where it's like, I'll get up and make something new. It'll at least clear the cobwebs, and maybe it'll beat this thing that we're celebrating tonight.
There's so much in what you just said. Like what I like to impress upon artists that I work with here, friends, like all of that. It's like there's all this celebration about releasing a song or releasing a record, as there should be, right? You're putting it out in the world. But like what I like to shine a light on is that word release can mean many things. You are releasing control.
Yeah.
Before you put out a song or a record, you have 100% control over everything. When it comes out, what it looks like, you can re-record and remix a song for literally decades if you want to.
Yeah.
But as soon as it is out in public, you have no control. So like what your keyboard player was saying, like, how do we get it from here? You don't. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
We're doing it. We're on our way to the show, bud. We're going to play them hopefully in key and hopefully in time. And people go, that's a cool song. Maybe I should buy the record.
That's it. Yeah.
The other thing though about that, what I've started to lean more into is maybe this was always true, but it seems to me like in modern times and as I get older, the anticipation is most of the fun. I was like, oh, maybe that's just in the music thing because you like make the songs, you're excited. Oh, this could be a hit or whatever. And then you record them and you're like, oh my God, we got the production right. Oh, it's coming out on September 54th or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Great. But then it comes out and you're like, I'm celebrating, but I kind of liked it 4 days ago and I had something to look forward to. Then I started realizing this was happening with vacations and trips. It was like half of it for my wife is like the planning of it. Oh man, but you might get to the trip and it rains or the kids have a meltdown or you're like, oh, this food sucks. There's bugs everywhere on this beach. And the anticipation of the trip was actually 80% of why you took it. And it was something to look forward to and it was exciting. And I think on some level, again, not talking so much about the creativity, but also the workflow, you're like, let's just keep creating that anticipation and kicking the can down the road. If I know we're going to go into the studio in a couple months, it'll push me to get more creative, knowing I have a deadline, and it's something to look forward to. And then we can repeat this cycle again instead of being like, oh, I've released all of the work we have in the vault or something. There is something to having that anticipatory joy.
I also think not dissimilar from, you said you knew that cycle from drinking, that you just like got bored of it.
Yeah.
I feel like I observe in the cycle of the music career path of like make music, promote it, anticipate releasing it, release it, and then, oh my God, what's going to happen? And building the excitement. And then the ultimate letdown of like, well, it doesn't feel as good as I thought it was going to feel, or the riding of the wave that eventually does fade. I've gotten bored of that. I was talking to a friend recently who was putting out an album, and we were kind of talking about the changing relationship and being in our 30s and mothers doing this. It's very different putting out music now compared to our 20s, when then it would be like being on tour all the time and partying and all this stuff. And it was just kind of this like, the excitement feels different. And maybe it's a mindset shift of not ramping up release day and also consuming everything through your phone of like, how many people are listening? How many people like it? How many people comment? And I was like, what if we changed our mind that it wasn't this fireworks day of release? And what if it was like this soft offering of I'm putting this record out that now is going to be out there for the rest of time for people to discover tomorrow when it comes out or 20 years from now. And I feel that all the time. I heard a Jayhawk song on the radio the other day and had never heard it before and looked up the record, and it was a record that came out 20 years ago. And I listened to it incessantly for weeks. And I was like, this is my new favorite song that came out 20 years ago. So I feel like it's kind of, again, us finding how to keep ourselves like regulated so that if maybe for us, I know for me, I don't do well anymore with like the constant roller coaster of the business side as well. And rather just being like, I keep making work that I'm going to
Yeah.
release and share with the world that's going to be out there forever, rather than the like, what's happening with it, who's liking it.
It's like, yeah, the sacred thing that you said is like the offering, and that's beautiful. That's a really spiritual way to look at it. And I think that that's awesome because I do think that's what you're tapping into. And then there's the like profane where you're like, I'm just making cans of beans. Sometimes you got to be like, man, I need a can of beans. And you reach into the cupboard and there it is. And you're like, shit, I forgot I had this. And that can of beans will feed you. So we have an old song in the set list, and there's a show, an Amazon show that is being made, and they just like synced two of our songs from records ago. And again, it was like they found a can of beans in there that they were like, we love that song. And when I get my own show, I'm putting that in my, and I'm like, oh, I don't even play those songs. So you're like, oh, that's cool that somebody's still interfacing with that in a way where A, they want to pay us, and B, their creativity is augmented or made better by the use of this thing that we made a long time ago. That's so cool. Really do think you just have to get your perspective right because you're an adult working. My manager is really good at this. This was early on when we were working together. He's quite young and he's very candid. And one of the things he said, I was like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if this record is up to the, like maybe I've made my best work on yours. And he goes, yeah, okay. Congratulations on having the only kind of job where this conversation gets talked about. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, your best buddy, Dave Adolph, is a teacher. You think he ever goes, man, I think the best lessons I taught were in 2007.
Yeah.
He goes, your other buddy, Brendan, he runs the beer distributor. You think he's going, man, I don't know if I can run this place as well as I did in 2012. He's like, it's fucking absurd. He's like, just do the work. You're good at it. You'll do good work. Keep doing work. And I was like, yeah, that is absurd. And it's great to not just be around musicians. I do find that challenging in Nashville. We come down there and it's like the promised land. It's everyone from LA and New York has converged there. There's all these studios. It's like La La Land. Everyone plays music and is better than us at it. And you're like, oh yeah, here's a studio. You're like, what? The problem I find if I'm there too long is people are talking about only music.
But not even only music.
The music industry.
Business.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a big thing for me. We lived in New York City for 12 years before we moved here. And in New York, you have a ton of musicians, but you also have a ton of dancers, a ton of actors, a ton of like all art forms. And so you can get together and the commonality then is creativity. Yeah. And when you're in Nashville, yes, there are, I guess, some actors, some dancers, some writers. It's diversifying, but it's still predominantly musicians. And so like it just kind of inevitably turns into a work conference where you're talking about the business and what works on the industry. And it's like,
and let's face it, I mean, I love Nashville. The people we've met, work with, they've become like family. So many of them are the most impressive people I know.
Yeah, the community is what keeps us here.
And also, Nashville is built on and continues to run on the same mentality that prospecting was, like California. Everyone's a gold prospector to some degree because hundreds of songwriters who would otherwise like have to do artist careers are making their offering to get on the radio. The radio is a scarcity model, like gold. So you're trying to hit the lottery. Our bass player, Luke, is a Nashville songwriter. Like he has a publishing deal or whatever. He's amazing at writing songs. Amazing. So fast. And he's taking all that energy and like, man, if I hit, I'm going to hit big. That's prospecting. That's different from creativity. That's using creativity to hit the lottery. And so on some level, I'm like, all right, well, the radio is going to go away. There'll still be ways to monetize songs. I get all that. But my point, I think on some level is it can be very tainting to the river to know I'm in there trying to pull out fish. And lots of songwriters in Nashville are just looking for gold. There's a fine line between the two. I am too kind of, but I'm also trying to have a conversation with an audience. I would love it if one of them hit big. It would be terrific.
Yeah.
But it's not my goal when I'm pulling fish out of the river. And I think that is a distinction that, it just sort of, you come back to like, it's your path. They're your kids. They're your songs. It's your day. Spend it however you like. But I find a lot of the ways that we're talking about that sound awful and challenging and soul-sucking are choices. I
Yep.
don't want to spend my day that way. Luke at different points, our bass player is like, well, you could do it, dude. You could get a publishing deal. And I'm like, A, I don't think you're right. I'm not as fast as I would need to be. And B, I don't think I want to spend my day that way. Like, I can go to the skate park with my kids rather than like do all the stuff I got to do for my artist career and then go, okay, well, maybe I can now write a hit that a country star might put on the radio, a waning commodity. And I tease them sometimes. I'm like, where are all these Nashville people going to go when radio's dead? And when Nashville's really too expensive and radio's gone and satellite radio's the only way to get a hit. Like, it is the intersection of art and commerce. And that part of it is just work. That's the part you have to like opt in and opt out of in terms of what you want to spend your time thinking and talking about.
Well, I think it's what you said. It's your path, knowing what you want to do. Individually, that's one of the things we love to talk about on this podcast, is just learning what you're willing to do for what you want. And then understanding the consequences. I've really come to terms with like, oh, I've been pining for this thing that I thought I wanted, but I realized I don't think I actually wanted it that bad because I haven't wanted to do the things you need to do to get there. I've wanted to prioritize my family life, all these other things. I don't want to be sitting in a writing room every single day or whatever it is that you're not willing to do. And understanding, like you said, your relationship with your creative goals and your business goals, they are different person to person. And it can be a challenge to remember that and not fall into, oh, well, maybe I should go over here because that's what people are doing to be successful. Oh, wait, no, okay, this is actually what I want to do. So I'm going to stay in my path.
Yeah, I was having a conversation years ago with a friend of mine, a woman I was close to, and I was talking about songwriting, and she was like, all I really need is half an hour's worth of material. But I was like, for what? She was like, then I have an opening set, and then I can go open for like everybody. And then I'll need 45 minutes worth of a set. And then I need like an hour's worth of a set. And I was like, you and I do this for entirely different reasons. And I had to respect that was her hustle. And she wanted to be famous. She wanted to be known, whatever that is. She wanted like a high follower count, whatever. And it was like, them songs are just a means to an end. I think my personality should be a known commodity, which I was like, okay, I can judge this or I can just go with it. You're a good person. And I think that this is probably going to be a soul-sucking endeavor for you, because if you just want to be known, what do you want to be known for? But I do think all of that comes into play when you're making music. Everyone's got sort of a different agenda. A lot of it is money and a lot of it is fame. And neither of those things are good for the soul. Neither of those things are good for your kids. Well, I guess the money part can be good for your kids. You got to buy them. But they're not what like your kids need from you in excess. Certainly not the fame or the notoriety part. The money part can help, but ultimately, like, we joke that I'm stubbornly creative to my own detriment. Yes, I understand if that's the first song, we'll hit the ground running faster. But like, I wanted to put out a political statement as the first thing we were doing on this record. And hopefully people either liked it or didn't and was like, well, maybe the next one I'll like. I don't know. Maybe they really liked it. But my point is like, I'm trying to do something else. And I think if you think about it in terms of business goals, I'm trying to do this for as long as I possibly can. Most of my friends who have done it and gotten really, really successful are now on the other side of the mountain. They're coming back down or they've come way back down. And at least due to the fact that it's never like totally taken off in like a giant way for me, I'm always climbing. And that's that anticipatory thing. You're like, whoa, this is a little bit better than last time. And I can play whatever I want at the end. I don't have to play the most known song last. And which a lot of legacy acts have to. What everybody really wants is the career of Will Hoge, I think, where he can go play everywhere. There's somebody coming and he has a hit song.
Well, the Wood Brothers call their career trajectory that I love the slow rise to the middle. They've been doing it for a long time and it just keeps getting a little better every time.
But I mean, that's fine. Like not every company's Coca-Cola. There's one Coca-Cola. There's one Taylor Swift. There's Beyonce, but ultimately the rest of us are out here working. And they're working harder than any of us work. I mean, let's face it. You go see their show or see their output. They are certainly an example of how to like be creative and work super hard at it. I think comparison's always going to be the thief of joy. Don't look at what other people are doing, except for if you're looking for inspiration. Because there's certainly bands I'll open for who, yes, they're getting paid on the gross much more than I am, but I'm also keeping more of the pie.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of like, it's me. I showed up here with my acoustic guitar. I'll sell the merch.
Oh, yeah.
I'll keep all the money. You know,
Yeah.
that's different from, yeah, man, we have 3 techs and a banner drop and a lighting guy and 2 trucks. It's like, yeah, that's cool. But how much money do you have at the end of the show? You know,
Yeah.
but there's all these metrics that are always swirling around that you don't really know exactly what somebody else's path is. And it's better off to just determine what yours wants to be and how to get there. Stay focused and try to keep it as pure as you can. That's my MO. And what I would sort of say to my brother, who's only 2 records in, or someone who was seeking advice, I would just go like, just do what you want and try to make it sustainable. And who knows what'll happen.
Yeah.
Dave, have you listened to one of our shows before?
I have not. No.
That is literally how we like to end every show, is ask, what would you tell somebody that's like just getting started?
Yeah.
Like, nailed it.
That's our last question.
Getting started, again, like I get asked this question often, and I typically just think someone who's got the goods to go the distance is probably not going to listen to my advice. They're probably going to go, this old fucker, I don't want to hear from you. I'm going to do it my way. Our friend Jared Hart is a wonderful singer and songwriter. He's in a band called Mercy Union. And he came down this weekend and like guitar teched for us because we had like a big Philly weekend. And he didn't bat an eyelash at the fact that he went from playing his guitar this weekend to like handing me a guitar. And he's hustling and he works in the music industry doing whatever. He'll sell t-shirts for the Bouncing Souls. He'll go make a show and make a nice fee from performing. He's hustling. And I respect that. That's like my contractor, working class hero kind of thing. Like the guy's providing for himself in this weird ecosystem of friends and family in an honorable way. And he's not worried about like, well, if I'm handing you the guitar, he's like, dude, it's a gig. This gig will be over. I'll be paid. I'm going to move on. I'll go play. Like it was so refreshing to work with people who understand that and don't get all jammed up on ego bullshit. And every auteur, whether that's Martin Scorsese or whatever, they've had to do something for money that they weren't that pumped on and had to compromise somewhere. And this is like one of the finest filmmakers in the history of film. You know, if he's had to do it, then one of us is going to have to do it. I think just do it. There's parts of every job that are hard. I'm here to work, you know, like yesterday, like, I mean, this weekend was a sold out show, right? A free show with tons of people. And then a show to like 70 Democratic hopefuls. That was my weekend. It was like so all over the map, but I was working. You know, my kids are enjoying Labor Day with their friends and I was out working. Like for me to get jammed up on like, well, how many people are here? How many? It's like, just work, keep going. I'm flying to Canada tomorrow. Show up and do it and be happy you have the work. To end on this might be helpful. Like when you have a music career of any kind, there's a dragon right behind you. You can feel the dragon's breath, you know, and that dragon will eat you and put someone else in your place. And I just always think of it that way. I'm like, when we were getting ready to play the Philly show, somebody was like, are you fired up? And I was like, I'm nervous. This is a good job. And you can lose your job if you're not careful, if you don't like do it at the highest level you possibly can. And I always think that way. I mean, no matter what, we have a festival that we're going into our 4th year. And to me, I'm like, we're doing our best. It was successful, but it's very possible that a dragon comes along and scorches that festival and it's
Absolutely, man. Dave, thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom, and really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. It was lovely. See you guys hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. See ya.
Thank you to all of you who subscribe to our Patreon or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get our show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do that right now, and we'll see you back here next week.